What's going on, guys? My name is Keenan. I'm a cinematographer based in London, and in this video we're going to be doing a short editing breakdown of Above the Rim, which is my latest project with LUMIXUK, shot completely on the LUMIX S5 into this monitor right here. This monitor is the Blackmagic Video Assist 12G HDR 5-inch version. And basically what it does is it allows the LUMIX S5 to output BRAW data directly into this monitor. But without further ado, let's jump into the editing breakdown. So in front of me, as you can see, is the timeline for Above the Rim. We have about 11 video tracks and about 10 audio tracks, but really the main timeline is actually this section of clips here, which is the graded clips from DaVinci, and I'll show you guys how I kind of got it from DaVinci back into Premiere Pro. So the first thing I had in my head before I even started filming this video was how I wanted the whole video to play out, and I knew there was going to be an interview scene in the video, and this voiceover was actually going to be driving the whole film. Right here we have the interview cut up into little segments. So right here are all the little bits that I needed.
More opportunities, meet new people. I mean, it's going to be a whole different ball game to what I'm used to.
So what I had to do was organize the interview sequence into how I wanted the film to run. Check on my audio track mixer. These are the effects that I have on the audio track to get the reverb. So I've got a multi-band compressor set to the broadcast setting to help level everything out. I've got a parametric equalizer here, which ups a little bit of the bass in his voice, which is right here, and takes out some of the harsh S sounds in his voice as well. And the last thing was the studio reverb, which is set to Great Hall. I've made a few different adjustments to the dry and wet levels. But yeah, aside from that, that is the effects on the reverb. So after I set up all the interview parts into the general areas where I wanted them, the next thing to do was to sort out the music. I wanted the beginning of the film to have this atmospheric, melodic undertone vibe and let his vocals, his voiceover, take the center stage. So this is why you can hear this bit.
I would say I like to play Above the Rim a lot.
And then later on, that's where I wanted the music to build up and have a bit more hype. Same with the ending part. The next thing to do was to actually find different clips within the project and overlay those and actually create the main video. Because we filmed the whole thing handheld, we had this really nice movement and I could control where I wanted the camera to be, where and when, and we also did some rehearsals, so I didn't really need to do too much effects to the clips, apart from sometimes a little bit of scaling to make sure like the ball is in frame or zoom in just for a bit more dynamic effect. So after putting all the clips into the timeline and doing my effects like scaling and warp stabilizer, all of that stuff, it was time for me to color grade the video. I wanted to color grade it in DaVinci Resolve because it's a way more powerful platform to color grade than Premiere Pro. I just prefer editing the main thing in Premiere Pro. First thing I had to do was condense my whole timeline into one track. You can see directly in front of me here, we just have clips overlaid on top of each other, and we don't want that when we're sending this file to DaVinci. So first thing I did was to duplicate this timeline and paste it into another sequence. And the reason for this is that DaVinci Resolve, when you send the file over to DaVinci for color grading, you can't have any effects on your clips, otherwise it would just mess up. So in one timeline, I kept all the effects, and in the second timeline, I highlighted all, right click, and then clicked remove attributes and just chose everything on the clips and removed all the effects. And the reason for duplicating it and keeping one that has all the effects and one without is that I can send the timeline that has no effects to DaVinci Resolve, color grade it, and when I put it back into Premiere Pro, I can then use the timeline that has all the clip attributes in it and then copy and paste those onto the DaVinci Resolve clips. It's a bit of a long workaround, but color performance and workflow you get from DaVinci, in my opinion, is worth it. After removing all the attributes on the clips, it was time for me to send it to DaVinci Resolve, and the way I did that was File, Export, and then Final Cut Pro XML. So after creating the Final Cut XML, I went into DaVinci Resolve, created a whole new project, and then clicked File, Import, and then you can click Import Timeline, and then it will just bring in that file, which is what you can see right here. The good thing about XML is that instead of making like a copy of the file, it actually tells DaVinci Resolve where to find the file. Each clip in this timeline is actually the proper clip, and we have the BRAW flexibility. We are in the color grading part of DaVinci Resolve. I'm not a colorist myself. I do want to get better at coloring, so if I am saying anything, this is just what I know and what I did. The S5 records BRAW directly into the Blackmagic monitor, and I love working with BRAW because it's such a fast codec and it allows me to change the white balance and the tint as if I was changing it on set, so it's super flexible. You can see right here we have the camera raw settings, so this is the beginning clip that you can see. And if I just disable everything, this is what the clip looks like without any color grade. We're in a color space V gamut, V-log. And if you wanted here, you can actually change the color space to anything you want that's on here. But yeah, so you can change all of this stuff like the white balance and all of this. And this is basically what it would look like if you changed it all in camera. So to give you a quick rundown of how I graded these clips, as I mentioned, I'm not a colorist, so don't hate me if I'm doing something wrong. So without everything, as you can see, it's very, very flat. V-log to the Blackmagic color space and a Blackmagic to Rec 709. I feel like it just gives that nice contrast. Next thing to do was the exposure to bring down everything. I didn't want the highlights to be sitting at anywhere higher than 75 IRE, I believe that's what it's called. You can see in the camera raw settings, it's all here. Decrease the exposure here, increase the tint by about 8 to give it that warm sunset look. Kept the color temperature at 5600. Next thing was to add a contrast adjustment, and this is the same thing here, a little bit of contrast. Log wheels to spread the RGB parade out a little bit more, and then added that LUT, which was the Fujifilm one right here. Next thing to do was to add a little bit of color adjustments, and this is in the log wheel, so you can see added a bit of warmth to the midtones and highlights on and off. You can see the clouds get a little bit of a warm color. Next thing to do was a halation. So if you zoom in right here, the halation is off, and if I turn it on, the halation is on. Halation is a kind of a characteristic of film where there's high contrast and there'll be like a slight red line. Next thing was a glow, and this glow, as you can see, makes a massive difference. It spreads out the RGB parade a little bit more, gives it a bit more contrast. I gave it a slight green tint color to give it that retro film look vibe. Slight vignette just to kind of direct your eyes to the center frame, and then obviously right at the end, grain. Anyway, so after all that is done, it's time for me to export that back into Premiere Pro. So the way you do that is you set your in and out points, all of that, and then you go here, Premiere XML. So after you've done that, go back into Premiere Pro, and then you do the same thing. You do File, Import, and then you could import the DaVinci XML. And what happens is it brings in all the clips, which you can see are right here. So these are the graded clips. And as I mentioned earlier, we did the duplicate timeline, so I could actually copy and paste the effects back onto it. So what I did was I found duplicated timeline that had all the effects on, and then what I do is click copy, and then right click, paste attributes, and you can choose which attributes you want to. It took me quite a long time to paste everything back onto the right clips. However, I couldn't think of another way to do it, so this is the way I did it. So a few of you guys might be wondering what this kind of gray section is over here, and what this is an anamorphic overlay that I created for myself. And what this does, it allows me to see what the final product will look like without black bars. And the one thing I don't want to do is actually create my timeline in this aspect ratio, because that means if I nest a clip, I won't be able to move it up or down if I want to reposition it. So what I do just before I export is I make the exposure of this overlay at +5. I go to export media, and usually it would look like this. So you can see this gray bar here, but what I like to do is actually export it in the anamorphic ratio. So having these gray bars in this bright kind of contrasty way allows me to see exactly where it is. So I'll just go like pixel by pixel until I can see that the gray bar has disappeared. So I can export it like this, and we are happy days. So yeah, that was it, a quick overview into the editing breakdown of Above the Rim. I'm also thinking of releasing the power grade that I made in DaVinci. So if you guys are interested in grading your videos and having a similar look to what I achieved in Above the Rim, hit me up on Instagram. I'll be sure to help you out there. But aside from that, I'm going to stop chatting, let you guys get on with your day. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.